I've been in the privileged position of talking to some of the greatest thinkers of our time on important issues. I'm talking about, wow, Mooji, Jordan Peterson, Tony Robbins, Brené Brown, Wim Hof, Deepak Chopra, ECKHART Tolle, pioneers in the worlds of spirituality, yogic advancement, contemplation. Maybe they ain't all for you. I mean, Jesus Christ, I've got people in my family that I find it hard to get along with. But let me tell you this. If you want to know about the nature of consciousness, how to utilize and mobilize your consciousness, how to even understand what the term consciousness even means, you could do a lot worse than listening to the views of Wim Hof, Jordan Peterson, some of the great thinkers of our time getting stuck in, Deepak himself, and of course, my adored personal favourite, extraterrestrial loving uncle of the ethereal realm, ECKHART Tolle. If you're curious about consciousness, the very thing that you are experiencing right now while you watch this video, then join me on this little journey now through some of my great conversations, all of which were conducted on my Luminary podcast, Under the Skin, which you can subscribe to, and you should subscribe to if you can afford to, links in the description. But for now, why don't you enjoy these moments? You and I, let's go on a journey together, a journey through consciousness with some of the greats.
The awakening can begin with realizing that you are not the thoughts that go through your mind. That's the beginning. Now, what has arisen at that moment? Awareness. Suddenly, you realize that there is a dimension of consciousness in you that's not thinking, but just conscious.
One thing that you'll notice when I'm dealing with ECKHART Tolle is I go into a sort of a state of kind of yogic wonder just by listening. I remember this interview very well. I asked one question in the podcast and the answer to that question took 45 minutes. I think the question was something like, what's going on? And if you say to ECKHART Tolle, what's going on? You better sit down and strap in.
That is the awakening, when you realize that you are underneath it all your sense perceptions, all your thoughts, underneath it all, there's this vast realm of conscious presence. There is a presence there, without which you wouldn't be able to perceive anything, you wouldn't be able to think anything. It arises, it's a little bit like, I compare it sometimes to, before you live on the surface of the ocean, you're a little ripple on the surface of the ocean. And this ripple only knows itself as a ripple. And it looks at other ripples and sometimes feels threatened by other ripples or wants to use other ripples to enhance its own sense of self. And it's always fearful. It always compares itself to other ripples. A very unpleasant and frustrating way to live. It hasn't realized the depth of its being, because the ripple is only a temporary expression of the vastness of the ocean. But it doesn't know that. So if the ripple for a moment comes to us, if the continuous thought, in this analogy, the ripple, of course, is the human being, and the ripple, when the ripple stops thinking for a moment, and this is the key, for a moment, you come to a cessation of the stream of thinking.
Those of you that are not familiar with Mooji, he's a British meditation teacher, and in his former life before transcendence, it's a curiosity, at least to me, that his sister's death after being held in police custody was one of the inciting incidents of the Brixton riots in the 1980s in London. When I spoke to Mooji about that particular incident, he says it seems like another person, another time, which makes me think transcendence, entering new realms of personal consciousness, really may feel like a moving away. What is enlightenment? What is it to understand, mobilize and utilize your own consciousness? Mooji's insights on this subject are fascinating. The idea that you are not your thoughts seems an unusual one, because I think that that is the sort of the nexus of identification. I'm Russell, I want these things, I'm from Essex, I support West Ham, these things happened.
I take that. Okay, let's back up a little bit then. For someone who would feel that way, if it were in the moment and I was with them, I perhaps wouldn't just say you're not your thoughts, because I'm aware that at one time I believe myself that I'm my thoughts. You see? So I can well understand if someone feels like that. So I'm not going to try and convince them that they're not their thoughts. I'd rather say, are you open to a little exercise of just looking? And if you can say, look, the thoughts are coming up, and say, for people who say that they suffer their thoughts, it's often because they take them very personally. And so, I would say, okay, let the thoughts come, and whatever their claims are, let them simply arise, okay? But you are here, no? And you simply pay attention to their coming. See if you can look without identifying with them. When I say without logging into them, meaning that see if it's possible. I know it is possible. Maybe in the beginning we feel, no, they're coming. Sometimes people may say, no, it's too loud. I can't. No, sorry, I can't. And then what do you want to do? So like I feel like somehow I embrace them or something. I said, no, let them come. And as though your lights are switched off, your lights of involvement are switched off. So you're only able to perceive, but not to log in or to subscribe to them for a moment. Just try it. And surprisingly, most people allow that space in themselves, and they begin to say, yeah, okay. And sometimes I even say, just say where you are right now in the looking. And say, well, all these thoughts are coming, but I'm able somehow to not grab them. So very good, very good. Simply stay like that. Doesn't matter how strong the thoughts are or how personal they are. Just let them run like you're watching a movie, okay? And if you do this, that is already a great step.
Sometimes I'm a bit embarrassed about my facial expression sometimes, particularly this kind of thing.
To see that you're able to stay out of the traffic for a moment, no? That's if they're able to do that. Soon they experience a kind of spaciousness, like, wow, I can actually do this. So I would put that as an important step. And gradually, instead of tackling the thoughts and try to change them or find some distraction from them, I said, no, just let them swim up, because you did not order them, and it's as though the thoughts are either auditioning for your attention, or that they are thoughts that you have given some amount of investment in them. They keep coming back, almost as though they feed on your attention. If they don't get your attention or interest or identity, they somehow just collapse into a kind of oblivion. They actually happens, you see. And so fresh are these exercises that you are experiencing immediate results to them, you see. So I'm happy that you stopped me there for a moment to say, okay, some people won't be familiar with that language, that I'm not my thoughts, or any such things like the mind doesn't exist. I'm not going to say that to anybody. I say that the world and the mind does not exist is not a great teaching. It's a great discovery, but it's not a good teaching. So I would not want to present someone, especially someone unfamiliar with this type of expression, I would not speak to them like that.
Jordan Peterson is perhaps unique among the people in these videos because he is a public intellectual who commentates on social issues, particularly, it seems, controversial ones, or at least the controversial ones are picked up, portrayed, relayed around the world ad infinitum. But on this subject, in the realm of spirituality, in the realm of awareness and self-improvement and self-development, Jordan Peterson, the dude knows the score. He's a clinical psychologist. He's seen the data. He's a great teacher. For me, I'm determined to focus on the aspects of a person's persona, abilities, personalities that I chime with, align with, agree with, rather than looking for reasons to argue and seek out conflict. Although in the conversation with Jordan, there was a degree of conflict. Not this bit though. This is a fantastic piece of dialogue between us. He does most of the talking.
Jung thought, his idea was something like this, that at the beginning of time, people were unconscious, and that consciousness emerged with all of its catastrophes, consciousness of death, for example. And one way out of the burden of consciousness was to return to unconsciousness. You can do that with alcohol. You can do that by being dependent. You can do that by failing to grow up. You refuse the burden of consciousness by becoming unconscious again. But there's another way forward, which is to become even more conscious. So the idea would be a little bit of consciousness is like an illness. But if you can expand that consciousness upwards enough, then it starts to become something that is its own cure. And that partly what your goal is while you suffer through life is to heighten your consciousness to the point where everything gets integrated enough so that that's proper medication for the disease of self-consciousness. And Jung believed that that was really that was one of the ideas that ran through the entire structure of Judeo-Christianity, although it wouldn't be limited to Judeo-Christianity. So it's more consciousness rather than less. It's more attention.
What I love about Wim Hof is this man is a fire-breathing Iceman yogic sensation. Some criticisms that are levelled at the New Age movement that I would be sympathetic towards are, oh, it's all crystals and woo-woo and it's ethereal and nothing's nailed down and clear. Well, one thing Wim Hof has done is he's subject his method to scientific scrutiny. He's healed himself from bacterial infections under clinical conditions. And more importantly to me, intuitively and sort of, I don't know, interpersonally, that dude is roaring with power. He feels like what it should feel like, you know. Wim Hof is a person we can all learn from. And on the subject of consciousness, how to enhance your consciousness, how to enhance your personal power, Wim Hof is a great expert.
There is simply a matter which we are not able to measure with the devices we have.
Yes.
And that gets into matter. And when that matter comes, then we are able to work with our consciousness.
Also nice hat.
On that matter to bring it back to that state wherein it was. And now release it to get back into that state. And there is the soul. There is the beautiful soul, which is immortal and indestructible. There we find a relief of the fear and the concept of what is death.
Yes.
And that should become physical. And now we have the devices to show by DNA research and big microscopes, etc., how the metaphysics and how the matter dynamics work before, while it goes into matter, and when it is released. It's like a telephone. It's a body. And when your telephone is kaput, your information, your consciousness is still in the iCloud. It's not dependent on our body, but with our body, we are able to do what those people who are passed away were not able to do, and they passed away. And their codes, their consciousness is encrypted in our genome expressions. And now we have found a way to tap in and to clarify. And thus we do the breathing. I bring the people with their consciousness inside. And at a certain moment, people begin to yell this and that strange thing. Like 2 days ago with 800 people.
Deepak Chopra, like anyone who operates in this space, is somewhat controversial. You may have seen some of his brilliant conversations with Dawkins and other atheists, I think Sam Harris. But Deepak knows the score, you know. He is an MD. He understands things very deeply and very beautifully. No one can be in the public eye for as long as Deepak has been without enduring and attracting a certain degree of criticism. But personally, I think he is a great teacher with great insights, and he conveys them most eloquently and clearly. This conversation with Deepak and the meditation that he taught me, which is also available on YouTube, check it out, is a meditation that I continue to use. He takes you deep, he helps you understand how to utilize, mobilize, expand your own consciousness.
Science also is an activity in consciousness. Experiments are designed in consciousness, theories are construed or conceived in consciousness, observations are made in consciousness. So science assumes the existence of consciousness, also assumes that matter is what gives rise to consciousness, but is unable to prove it. This is called the hard problem of consciousness. And yet every scientific discovery, including Nobel Prizes, are given to people who find some little aspect that explains how matter behaves, this particle or Higgs boson or whatever. These are human constructs for modes of knowing and experience in our consciousness. If you use the word, instead of using the word spirituality, just use the word consciousness. Then you have a little entry into this world.
If you enjoyed that video, please let me know in the comments below. Like and subscribe. We need subscribers. And yeah, hit me up with some comments. Also, sign up to russellbrand.com to get emails from me. We can communicate directly with one another. I'm doing a live show in the UK. Link in the description if you want to come and see me doing some live shows. Also, my streaming Shakespeare show, Shakespeare Our Little Lives, is also available, and there will be a link available, if not in this description, then on my website. Thank you very much for watching. Let me know what else you'd like to see videos on, because we've got a catalogue of some of the best thinkers in the world talking about the most important subjects that there are. Let me know what you want to see us talk about in the comments.